All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sandro Tejada, Director of Major Gifts and the Seton Hall Parents Program. Thank you for joining Seton Hall Week in our virtual offering, How I Got Here, discussion with Seton Hall parent Paul D'Ambrosio. This session is being recorded. We will have an on-demand page and we'll add all our Seton Hall Week recorded sessions to this page. Please kindly mute yourselves, and if you have any questions during this session, please use the raise your hand icon on the top right of your screen. And please use the chat feature to share your questions or hold your questions until our Q&A session. Just a little bit about the How I Got Here discussion or series. It's just discussions that provide students the opportunity to get a first-hand perspective about the careers enjoyed by our talented Seton Hall parents. I'm honored to have the privilege to introduce our guest speaker and Seton Hall parent Paul D'Ambrosio. Paul is the executive editor of the Asbury Park Press and APP.com, one of the largest news sites in the Gannett Company, which is the largest news operation in the nation. Paul's work as a journalist has helped and redlining in New Jersey, improved hospital care, uncovered political corruption, and exposed criminal cops. He and his teammates have won nearly all the top national journalism honors, and they were finalists for the Pulitzer Prize in Public Service in 2010. Holds a BA in Political Science and History from the George Washington University and an MA in Journalism and Strategic Communications from the University of Memphis. He is also published author of 2 Jersey-based thrillers that feature a young chain-smoking nun with a penchant for international trouble. Paul's son, Adam, is a freshman at Seton Hall's College of Education and Human Services and a member of the Pacino Leadership Institute. Thank you, Paul, for being with us this evening, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sandro. I appreciate it. Thank you all for joining me tonight. It's a great honor. As Sandro said, I'm Paul D'Ambrosio. I'm the executive editor of the Asbury Park Press and APP.com. That's our online version. One of the largest news sites in the Gannett Company, which is the largest news operation in the nation with more than 200 daily news sites across the U.S. Now, as executive editor, my job is to ensure we publish solid journalism every day that affects people's lives. I have a staff of nearly 60 journalists who post about 30 stories a day, plus a dozen or more videos. It's a super competitive news world out there. We are in the major New York metro area, so I have 70 competitors, large and small, who want to eat our lunch on every story. And trust me, when we have a big story, New York and Philadelphia media are down there almost immediately, some with helicopters trying to cover the story. Still, we are the dominant news site at the Jersey Shore. We do local daily stories, of course, but we also do deep investigations that have changed laws, sent the bad guys to jail, and thrown corrupt politicians out of office. We are one of the best local news sites in the nation, honored with more than 36 top national awards, including 2 this year. I personally have been a finalist for the Pulitzer honor, for the top Pulitzer honor, which is a public service gold medal for leading a team that exposed how corrupt and discriminatory Jersey's property tax system is. And if any of you are homeowners, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the best part of this job is I get to work with some of the nation's great journalists. Let me show you a couple of the projects that have exposed abuses by bad cops 2 years before the George Floyd incident, and how we went behind the scenes and in the critical care units at the height of the COVID pandemic this summer. Let me just share my screen here. Let's see. Always technology. Here we go. All right, if you can see this, this is a project we did in July, which we went to the frontline workers at the hospitals and talked to them about their experiences treating the massive number of COVID patients coming in, and many of them dying on their watch. Heartbreaking, informative, enlightening. And let me just play for a little bit this video we shot that really gives you a sense of exactly what's going on here. I just have to turn the sound on to make sure I get the sound correct. Can you hear that?
Nothing's coming out, Paul.
Okay, let me try again to turn the sound on here. Okay, this should work now.
You just get like, okay, what's today going to be like? A normal shift.
And that you hear that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
What is a normal shift?
Try not to listen to any sobby songs on the way in because that will just set you off.
I talk to myself a lot.
Not listen to the news.
Every morning before I enter the hospital, I stand few minutes and I pray to God.
I pray.
Every day.
Hold on.
I go on my knees and I pray. And then I come to work.
When you walk in here, you want to make sure you prepare yourself mentally and physically.
Reality of it is it kind of smacks you in the face.
Every day it's a little bit different here.
They even requested to have prayer at our morning huddle.
Nothing is the way it used to be. Nothing is the way you would expect it to be.
Very overwhelming.
I wouldn't really call it a shift because there's really no on or off time period.
Weekends and Monday through Friday, all different hours and times.
It's very busy and very long.
But you just gotta stay strong and keep doing your best.
And you know, that really helps drive home exactly what's going on, and we wanted to ensure that readers saw firsthand the just firsthand news. This is news. This is what's going on, and we don't want to do it from the sidelines. And we set up. We spent a couple weeks working with the hospitals to set up the proper protocols to ensure that our staff was safe, their staff was safe. We have plexiglass dividers between the camera and the subjects. Everyone was masked and gowned up. So we took that chance and we wanted to show that story. So we went the extra length, which no other real news site would have done, to kind of show that in our area. So that's what sets us apart from other sites, because we do the big J journalism. You know, we also dug into the details too. If you can see this screen here. We worked on a project that looked at why nursing homes were being hit hard. We looked at the records to show a lot of the infection control failures in the past are coming back to roost now. And as soon as they wrote this story, you see here at the editor's note, after the story was published on the web May 5th, Governor Phil Murphy called out the National Guard to aid the hardest hit nursing homes. Until then, this was an issue that was not really being driven home to the administration. They didn't know how extensive it was. They knew the body count, but they didn't know the problems. And we just kept on driving it home with them over and over and over again. And that's the journalism that we try to be proactive about to ensure that people can get the message on this. And another story we had really looks at some of the, let me see here. Some of the stuff that affects everyone: parents, students, grandparents. Looking at the dangerous school buses, we found dangerous loopholes in school bus safety rules. After a deadly crash, they passed a new law to prevent future crashes, and we found that there's loopholes to allow bad operators to stay on the street. And 48 hours after the story ran, the Attorney General came down and said, this operator that you exposed, we're going to charge them with 4 or 5 different crimes because what they were doing was illegal. And so we were happy to expose that. We're happy that lawmakers and authorities are digging into this, and we're doing what we need to do to make sure that the public is safer because of that. So, that's an example of some of the journalism we do. It's not easy, it's not quick, but it's important, and it's part of the whole message we're trying to get across is that what we do has an impact on your life. So the question is, and I'm happy to do this. This is part of my job. I love doing it. So the question is, how did I get here? How did I end up doing what I love every day? Well, it's a very twisted path. I didn't start out saying I'm going to be a top journalist one day and do X, Y, and Z. I didn't go to my college career thinking I would be a journalist. I went to school thinking I would become a lawyer or a political insider. I love politics and went to the George Washington University in DC to study political science and history. I was a political science and history double major. I wasn't a journalism major. I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked in the courts. But then when I went to college, I took a camera with me. I said, I can take some pictures for the college newspaper in my spare time. Then I found I had a knack for writing stories. Then I found my stories moved people to do something, to make changes. Then I became the college newspaper news editor. And then I thought this was really, really fun. And during the summer, I worked part-time for the Asbury Park Press as a stringer. I then interned there one or two summers, and then I graduated. I no longer had an interest in going to law school, and with an economic downturn in DC, a major newspaper that was going to hire me suddenly closed up shop one morning. I woke up and heard on the radio, and the Washington Star has now closed. I said, okay, thanks. I had no job prospects. So my straight line path suddenly took an abrupt turn. I headed back to New Jersey to become a reporter trainee at the Asbury Park Press. I moved along to a reporting beat, then a bigger story, then the courthouse reporter. And along the way, I was honing my craft as a writer. I was finding different ways to write stories and make sure they were tight and informative and got to the point. But I was getting bored talking to people. That's what reporters were doing. Just talk to A, talk to B, write a story, move on. But then I discovered how computers could help me as a reporter. I could analyze a massive amount of data, find the problems, and become a proactive reporter. I would tell lawmakers what I found and ask them what they were going to do about it to fix the problem. They no longer told me what they were doing. I was telling them, you have to do something. What is it? I found this. It's real. It's from your information. You fix it. My colleagues and I ended redlining in the state, exposed deadly hospitals, child abuse and foster care, bad housing, tax scams, public crimes, abuses, you name it, we found it. And it's Jersey. As I tell people at a lot of journalism conferences, I have the best job in the world because I work in New Jersey. There's two great places to work, New Jersey and Florida, and I'm in one of them. Just yesterday, I found 300 people who were registered to vote in New Jersey and also in Florida, making them able to vote for president twice this year. Now, is there a secret to success? I don't know. I don't know what it is. I wish I could bottle it. I tell my reporters, just simply find your passion. Make the story you are working on the best story of your career until the next story comes along and make that your best story of your career. Be always honing your craft. I spent many late nights, as my wife can attest, at home on a Stone Age computer learning database skills, mapping, programming, and anything else I needed to get to that story. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I just punched the clock each day. That's where the passion comes in. You have to say, I love this, I want to keep doing this, I want to learn and be better. I still feel I'm on a mission to let people know what is being hidden and what needs to be fixed. And passion comes with being practical. I knew I could have an even bigger impact if I moved up the ranks, so I became an investigative editor, news editor, and finally, executive editor. Along the way, I used my skills to build out and build up on our journalism and our local business model. We have twice as many subscribers online now than we did a year ago. I hope to double that in another year. People want to know what is going on. My staff and I are here to tell them that every single day. We do that 24/7, every day of the year. So the next question is probably, what is the job market like today? Let me be honest, it's brutal. The industry has been hit hard by COVID, just like every other industry in the country. But we still have to hire people. I look to applicants who have shown writing flair and curiosity. That's a big deal to me. Are you passionate or are you curious? If you come in and you know everything, then I don't need you as a reporter, because your job is to find stuff out, not to tell me what you know. Can you use social media to gain an audience? And do you have the skills that we need? Video, database analysis? Are you comfortable on camera? Can you stand up at a live crime scene and do a live broadcast, for example? And are you quick on your feet? Can you think on those broadcasts and quickly ask questions and quickly move with the flow? So, that in a way is my back and forth in my career and how I got here. And I say, depending what day it is, I wonder how I got here, because I wonder if I started out today with what I know, if I would still be here. It's very unusual for someone to be in one company for so long and make it to the top. But through perseverance, through just dedication, through making a change, if I wasn't spending all this time writing stories that had a big impact or working with teams that had a big impact, I wouldn't be here too long. So, it wasn't quick for me. I didn't become executive editor 10 years in. I became executive editor 30 years in. And so far, it's working out pretty good. But at the end of the day, it's something that that you just realize that it takes twists and turns to end up where you are. And a lot of times it works out better than you thought.
Paul, I have a question for you.
Sure.
And it's specifically, you probably shared some good tidbits here, but what is one advice that you would give to our Seton Hall students, especially those that are interested in becoming a journalist, especially in this brutal job market that you just shared?
I would say work with a mentor, find a way to get introduced. We want to hire people we're comfortable with. So find that internship, find that professor who could introduce you to people in the business. Write like it's a skill you have to keep building. So you can only get better by writing. So do a lot of writing. Write for the school newspaper. Try to do, if you have a local news site like Patch or anything like that, try to do stringer assignments and do small stories and build from that. It's essentially critical that you know the craft inside out. So when you come in, you can say to someone, especially during an internship, hey, I know exactly what I have to do, and you do it and you deliver a high quality product. That's a big impressive result, because by the time you graduate and there's an opening somewhere, you may be #1 on the list for being hired. So, always keep that in mind. Is like always work your connections and work your craft, and something will happen. And it may not be, you may not be hired at the site you interned at, but with Gannett, if you intern for me and I don't have a job opening when you graduate, and I really think you'll be a real asset to the company, I may recommend you to a number of other sites to take a look at you. So if you're flexible, you may say, oh, I may want to go to Nashville because they have an opening there and they have a great team there. That's the possibility too. So in this day and age, because so many media companies are connected, it's really a great way, once you've got your foot in the door, to start fanning out and finding other opportunities across the company.
And this is maybe a follow-up what you just said in regards to finding a mentor. Did you have a mentor during your beginning stage as a journalist?
Not at college. I just kind of learned it as I went, and I kind of found out what worked and didn't work in college. So I technically made all my mistakes in college. When I came here, I did have an editor who really worked with me a lot, and he taught me a lot of stuff about the legal issues, the libel issues, just making sure the stories are tight and come right to the point. So yeah, people before me helped me out a lot, and in that way, that helped give me an edge up on what I'm doing now. And I'm helping reporters out now. Like I'm trying to. It really took me 10 years to learn my computer craft. I'm trying to help reporters learn that in like a fraction of the time, because I know when I was learning this, no one else guided me. I kind of self-taught myself, so that takes a lot longer. And the technology back then was Stone Age. Now it's much more simpler to use, and a lot different technology. So it's a lot faster, easier, and a lot less bumps in the road. So I point reporters to some of the shortcuts I've found over the years, and that helps them, avoid those stumbling blocks when they're trying to learn the craft themselves. So that's the real advantage of learning, hooking up with someone who knows the craft and has been in the business for a long time, is they can give you all the shortcuts that you need.
Thank you. Great answer. Now, you mentioned, well, I know you received your master's in communication at the University of Memphis. Do you recommend students to pursue a master's in communication, especially now that, with the job market being brutal? Does that help with being hired at, let's say, at Gannett, when you see someone that's applying with a master's versus one that just has a BA, or does that not make a difference? It's really talking to an individual and seeing if they do have that passion or curiosity, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think there's three components. I want to make sure that they have the personality for the job, which is that curiosity and passion. I also want to see their track record. I want to see what they've written, what they've done, and what skills they have. Grad school may be helpful for that, to really polish their computer system reporting skills and their analytical skills. So if someone comes in with a good analytical mind, that's a real asset, because when we work on complex projects, we need someone to say, A plus B does not equal C here. There's something else going on, and I want to dissect it and take it apart. So that's where grad school comes in, is that kind of sharpening that analytical theory. Now, what I really look for, though, is someone in a different discipline. So if you come in and you are a computer programmer, for example, but you have a high interest in journalism and have done journalism, you may have some skills that we don't have currently, and you can help essentially program stories to look differently on the web, be much more interactive, create different modules for us to be interactive, and build out a lot of databases that we can use for the story. So that's a real plus too. We've hired journalism graduates, and we've hired non-journalism graduates, and it really comes down to how they feel, where their passion is in the business, and where they where their motivation is and where their drive is. I've hired a really great reporter from Columbia Journalism School grad school. He was on the accelerated program. He graduated, was in journalism for 5 years, went back to grad school, and came in. And he did one of the best stories I've ever seen about reverse engineering an LLC. And this was part of a series we did on substandard housing in New Jersey, which then that whole package became a finalist for the Goldsmith Award, which is kind of like second to the Pulitzer. So it really shows that he had that analytical skills, and he also had the writing skills from his 5 years in the business to put that all together. So it was a real pleasure to hire him, to work with him, and to really see the final product. So yeah, it can help you. So I just recommend a blend of it. The way I did it was I went to grad school after I got my job, and the company paid for it. So that's another way to make sure you get your education, and it's low cost impact.
We've heard from other parents that have participated in this How I Got Here series in regards to work-life balance. And I'd imagine as an executive editor, even a writer, balancing a family and your career, where, it could kind of dictate what path you take in regards to the commitment that you have in your career, especially if you have a family at a very young age. Can you share a little bit about that? Because it's a theme that has come up with those that have shared their career paths, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. First rule is marry a saint. So my wife's very patient, and she's from the business too, so she understands the calling of the business. In the early days, it's a lot of late hours. Back then, when we only did a newspaper, sometimes we stayed Friday night to finish the Sunday newspaper, 9, 10 o'clock at night, so we can go to print on Saturday for Sunday. So that was a lot of hours in the early days. Now, with technology, the flip side is you can spend less time at work, but you're essentially spending more time at home doing work. I'm on call 24/7. I get messages all through the day and all through the night. from different people, sometimes with urgent issues, other with minor issues, or just staying on top of what's happening so I can jump in if there's a problem. So it becomes a blending of your home life and your work life. And I think what you have to do is psychologically divide that. You have to say dinner time's for the family, game time is for the family, and we have different events on the weekend we will go out and do, and that's family time. And if there's an urgent need, I can get that instantly on the phone and I can deal with it, but that's just urgent. I don't have to run into the office or do anything I have to do, let's say, 15 years ago. But yeah, technology has blended the two together. I wish like sometimes it's like France where once you're off, they can't call you, but I can't be doing that. I'm essentially the CEO of the Asbury Park Press operation, and I have to make sure that the operation works efficiently. Now, I'm very aware of that. I talk to my staff about the need of having a work-life harmony. You have to keep in balance, and I don't want to burden my editors below me with saying you have to work 7 days a week. And I tell them, don't burden your reporters with high demands that affects their home life too. Don't call them up at 9 o'clock at night and say you have to get to the story unless a plane crashes into a hospital. What we need to do is make sure that we have that balance. We have a healthy and safe work environment, and employees are happy to do their job. I'm very big on making sure we have work harmony where we're not oppressively forcing reporters to write stories they don't want to write. We want them to find their own stories and be passionate about that and to deliver the goods, because the best reporters are ones who really are invested in what they're doing, not being told what they're doing. So once we create that environment, I think it's a much easier way for staff below me to kind of have that division of labor is work is this hour and home life is this hour, and we try not to mush those two together anymore.
Thank you. For any of our participants, please, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Paul.
All right, I see a question here. What do you think about the social media platforms where kids have more followers than the news outlets? These influencers can make news more or less relevant and drive the areas of interest. Is this a good or bad thing? And do you have an opinion on the rise of these young social media influencers? Well, it's both good and bad. I don't have any objection to it. Social media, we partner with social media influencers to drive our stories and to work with them and understand what they're doing. We actually have what we call storyteller conferences. They used to be live events until the pandemic. We would bring the social influencers together, and then we were inviting an audience in, a live audience, and we would have a reporter ask them questions as a moderator. Says, tell me about your brand. How do you develop your brand? How do you develop your follower? What's your advice to everyone else about becoming a social influencer? People want to learn that. So in that respect, we're not competitors. They're moving a product, or they're doing entertainment or fashion, and that's fine. We cover them as news as things develop, and we work with them to try to grow our stories. So let's say we have a Bruce Springsteen story, and we want to push that to social media. We may go to social media influencers who follow Bruce Springsteen, and they push that story out, and it benefits all of us. So anytime we do a Bruce Springsteen story, it gets hundreds of thousands of page views because people across the globe want to know what he's doing locally at the Jersey Shore. And we have a writer almost exclusively dedicated to covering Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi because they're Jersey Shore people. And they work the social media very, very well. So that word gets out very quickly and moves across the spectrum. Now you have the other social influencers, which is the political spectrum and the kind of the quasi-news spectrum. That gets a little bit more dicey. When you have people who are not trained journalists who are mostly giving opinions and trying to put that off as news, that blurs the lines between what we're doing, which is journalistic news and articles, versus someone's opinion masquerading as journalism. And in the public's mind, and the vast majority of the public, they can't distinguish the difference anymore. When they see a Facebook post, they think it's news when it's not news. And when they see one of our posts, they may think it's opinion when it's not opinion. So that's the downside of that, is that total blurring of the media landscape. And the industry is to blame too in a lot of respects. You turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, most of the program is about opinions, but they don't say that. They don't say we're the cable opinion network. They say we're the cable news network. And so that helps kind of have some, I would say, confuse people, but leads people to believe that some statements are news and some news are opinions, and that's kind of hurts my job, because I have to kind of explain to readers, even though we wrote a story about Trump, it's a factual story. It doesn't mean I hate Trump. It's just a fact, you know, and that's the difference of what we're doing. Okay, and let me see. This is a good lead to my next question. In a time when bots push news before it's been vetted, leading to a lot of disinformation, what steps would you suggest people take to make sure what they are reading is true? Any quick ways, as we have limited attention spans? Yes, stick with legitimate news sites. You know, Asbury Park Press, NJ.com, New York Times, you know, Washington Post, whatever your political leanings are. Find a news site that has real journalists writing real news. You know, if you see something that says, oh, I set up my own news site and it's called Bob's News Site, it's not going to be news. He doesn't have any journalistic principles or practice or understanding of what goes into a news package, or fairness or balance. So that's the one red flag. Now, and Facebook's aware of these issues of you know, fake news or fake memes or fake viral posts. Gannett has partnered with Facebook to take any political posts that are viral and to vet them. And we have a whole team across all Gannett. There's probably you know, probably 24 reporters who take who will take a viral story, vet it, and then Facebook would attach our story to that viral meme and say, hey, this is the real facts behind the story. It may be partially true, it may be false, or it may be totally true. But we vetted it and we let you know, and it's from a real news site like USA Today. So that's you know, that's what we're trying to do to kind of tamp down a lot of disinformation that's going on out there.
Great question. Paul, I'm curious, what story are you most proud of that you were involved with in your career?
I get this, I'm asked this question a lot, and I always go back to my first story that made a difference. And I don't even know if I was a full-fledged reporter yet, but it was summertime. I was working in a bureau, and I got a tip that a kid had been kidnapped by her father, and the father could not be found, and they wanted to get the word out. The judge wanted to get the word out that the father has to come to court and turn the kid over. And so I wrote the story saying that no one can find the father. It's important that the father come to court to straighten us out, because it's detrimental to the kid's health as a young kid. The guy read the story the next day, and he showed up in court. He says, okay, you're right. I have to come to court and settle this, you know, man to man, and not hide in some unknown place. So that showed me the real power of the influence that just a few words can do to make a big difference. And the grand scheme of the thing, it's not a big story. To that girl was probably an important story. But to me, it just showed me that it made a big difference. So, you know, that's my kind of, you know, real revelation when, as a journalist, to say, hey, you know, words make a difference.
Thank you for sharing. I know one of the things that students have been asking in regards to the possibility of shadowing reporters, and I know in this, you know, time with the pandemic, where, you know, it's probably harder to do, but have you had journalism majors shadow any of your employees at Asbury?
We had that before the pandemic. They would spend a day with the reporter, go on interviews, and they would just see what went into building a story. We had 3 interns this summer and all remote. So it was very difficult for us to pair them up with a reporter and go out to a scene. What happened was I would pair them with a reporter. The reporter would give them the rundown about what the story was about and what they needed to do, and try to let their intern fill in the blanks, either do some research or talk to people or actually go out to a scene and observe a scene, for example. And that the interns, they left, they enjoyed their experience here. So I think it worked out for them, but I really wished we could have had that in-person them too, but that's something we're not going to have until everything, the virus goes away.
I think
and I have to point out, no one ever wants to shadow an editor.
Now, have you seen, I mean, in your time, beginning your career, have you seen a difference in the type of writing from those that are beginning their journalism career? Or is it pretty much, if you know how to write, you know how to write, and there's not much of a difference?
Yeah, I mean, well, from the start of my career to now, journalism has changed tremendously. Back then, it was very formal, stiff writing. Now it's more conversational. We're trying to connect with readers. Because of the internet and social media, we no longer have a one-way conversation. Back when you had newspapers, it was always one way. You wrote a story, you published it, you never knew what the readers thought about it unless they wrote you an angry letter or called you up. Now we're on social media and we're going back and forth in conversations or in emails, on Twitter, any different multiple channels, and reporter gets feedback constantly in a two-way conversation with the readership, and that helps us develop relationships and also start developing influencers and their own followers. They become their own kind of little mini company in many respects. We also have metrics now. Metrics reflects back to us instantly what people are reading and not reading. And so we can adjust the headline. We can adjust maybe the top of the story. We can adjust the blur. We can adjust social media. And so the writing today is a lot more. It's not just you write it once, it's printed, and you're done. We may alter a story 2 or 3 or 4 times during the day to try to fine tune it to grow that audience. Style-wise, I think the writing, there's always going to be really superb writers, and that's across generations. And when they write, it's a great story. So that writing style is never going to change because they bring the emotion, they bring the depth, they bring what I call the 5 senses into the story. So you feel like you're immersed into the environment. So that's a great writer. Someone's going to immerse you in that story. And then we have standard writers and beginning writers who just kind of tell you the story from the outside looking in. And what my job is to help them push them past that barrier and help them get immersed in that story so they can tell you that story to make you really want to just sit down and think about it or even cry. We had a story today about the 1,000th death from COVID in Ocean County. And I'm a hardened journalist. I've seen pretty much everything from mass homicide to disasters to Superstorm Sandy. There's nothing much that phases me anymore. I sat down last night to read that story, and they led off with a woman's parents, 2 parents dying in the same nursing home from COVID. I almost started crying because they pushed past that envelope of the wall and got me into that room with the daughter and her parents, and not being able to be with their parents at the time they were dying. So that was an incredibly emotional story, and that shows you a writer who went the extra step and was able to break through the barrier and put me in that moment. So that's the difference. That great writers are always going to be great writers, and they will always do that. It's just that the technology now allows us to see what's working and what's not working and to make adjustments.
Thank you, Paul. As we are approaching our 45th minute in this wonderful discussion, Paul, are there any final thoughts you would like to share with our students? Oh, wait, there's another question here. Yeah, there's a question here. Sadly, a lot of small town and even large newspapers folded over the last 20 years. Do you see a rise of new papers or new media digital companies, and where people, sorry, I just lost track of where people can make a living in the news business like they used to, like a few employees doing it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough business. There's never going to be any new newspapers. No one's ever going to start a new newspaper. The cost is just prohibitive. No one has a printing press that they can afford. Newspaper costs are just extravagant, and readers are not buying newspapers anymore. It's all moving to digital. We still have the Asbury Park Press as a print product. That's stable. That's our goal, is to maintain it and keep it stable, not to let circulation drop. The real growth for us is on digital news. And as I said, we're doubling our digital subscribers in a year. We want to keep on doubling that every year. But that's a long haul. And what's happening now in the industry, we're moving away from the advertising model and we're moving to the subscription model. And we're asking people, hey, if you want the news, please pay for the news. And it's really pretty cheap. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can get a whole month's worth of the Asbury Park Press or any other publication, New York Times, Washington Post. It's all very cheap. And what we're trying to do is build volume. So, like I think New York Times has maybe 1 million or 2 million readers. That's good volume, because with that money coming in, they can keep their operation going. For the smaller operations, a little bit tougher. For us, we're growing, and that's good. And we're using that money to kind of keep the newsroom going. But for anyone to start a digital operation today, it's a lot of patience and perseverance, because if I open up my own local town news today, I'm not going to make any money. I'm going to be essentially at a loss for 5 years until I can get some advertising dollars to come in. So maybe I can get enough content that people see it's worthwhile subscribing. And it's a very, very tough business model. And trust me, if anyone has figured out a better way to make money, please let me know, because every media company in the world wants to know that. It's a dichotomy in the business where you have to maintain the newspaper, and you also have to grow the digital online sites. And it's very, very difficult to do both effectively. Gannett has economic issues like everyone else, and they're working through it by making sure that we have the right people in the right place and we have the right strategy going forward.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, like I just said, any final thoughts you would like to share with some of our Seton Hall students?
I tell my reporters and editors, hate the business, but love the work. Sometimes a business can be frustrating because we have these ups and downs of the cycle, the industry and stock market, and in the boom and bust cycle of the business arena. That's the dark side of the business. But if you love writing, you love reporting, there's nothing better to do. Talent always finds a home. If you're a great writer and you want to write, and you can do some good reporting, you want to make changes, there's nothing better in the world. I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and I still get a thrill every day when I sit down at my terminal now and see what's coming down the pike, or working with a reporter on a story, or in some cases working with the data itself and just trying to come up with extract information from the data so we have a story. It's a great vocation. It's just that you have to find the right site where you can expand and grow and prosper.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for participating in our How I Got Here series. I think you shared a good amount of information for our students, and we're excited that you're a part of our Seton Hall family, and your son and your wife. And again, thank you for doing the great work that you're doing. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much. I just want to share with everyone that, Seton Hall Week will finish tomorrow on Friday, October 30th. We have 2 back to school classes with wonderful faculty. At 11 a.m., we have back to school Dr. Sigletano, who's our associate professor of religion, and he'll be teaching a class that's going to examine the fundamental question: is death bad, and if so, why? That should be interesting. And at 2 p.m., we'll have another back to school class with Dr. McKenna Shrey and Catherine Lacioni, instructors of public relations, and they're going to give you a nice insight into the introduction to public relations. So we hope that you all could join us. Also, if you haven't submitted your time or your run for the virtual Farinala 5K, please, because tomorrow the winners will be announced for each age bracket. I know I'm not going to win. So, but again, thank you all for joining today's speaker series with Paul D'Ambrosio. And thank you and have a great night, and go Pirates.
Thank you. Go Pirates.
Have a great night, everyone.